The story has been
Thank
so
you.
fascinating, a roller coaster over the last couple of years. And I'm curious, as you were reporting this out, what was the thing that surprised you most about this story?
Well, I knew the outlines of what had happened to the company and Adam's journey as the leader of it, but I didn't understand the journey that so many of the people who worked there took. And it was really interesting to learn about the many, many people who helped make the company and the sort of quilt of experiences that went into what became the WeWork story.
How many ex-WeWork employees did you speak to for this project?
We spoke to dozens of people. Of course, not all of them are in the film, but in the process of researching it and finding out whose stories would be best representative of the overall story, we spoke to dozens of people from all areas of the company, from high up executives to mid-level folks to some of the people just on the ground in the different offices who made WeWork tick.
And what was their main message? What did they think went so wrong?
I think what was interesting to me is that a lot of the people who joined, especially as younger millennials, or even some of the people who were a little older who joined it in more senior positions, felt like there really was a there. There really was something to the idea, and their experiences there were very meaningful to them, which is what sort of gives the story and the film, I think, some heart. Because in the end, when things go south and Adam is pushed out and the IPO is canceled, I think they felt very betrayed because they really believed in something that was real. And so it was, people have different reasons describing Adam's hubris or getting out over his skis or drinking too much of his own Kool-Aid and believing too much of his own hype. And all of those things are true. I think they also point to the pressures from the big investors who obviously expected WeWork to live up to its billing as a tech company and to have these incredible growth metrics. And when it was clear from the S1 that that wasn't likely to be the case at that point, that certainly drove it down. But I think what from a narrative perspective and from a sort of human understanding perspective was most interesting is that people really felt that their experiences there were meaningful and important.
Now, you center on this video of Adam trying to put together an IPO roadshow video where he's struggling. Right. How did you get your hands on that footage?
I can't really get into the sort of journalistic methods and sources in that regard, but I can say that to me, it was very revealing. I knew from when we started the film that it was fairly unlikely that Adam would participate because he was in the middle of a bunch of litigation. But I felt it was important to see this man who had really built this company by being an incredible salesman and who spent hours and hours and hours in front of video cameras, always sort of turned on to get behind the scenes of that a little bit. And so that video to me is really revealing because you see him sort of unable to do this thing that he does so well. He was unable to just deliver a pitch to video, which is something he'd done hundreds or thousands of times. To me, it's sort of like the pinnacle moment of needing to do that right before you finally go public, which is something he should have been able to do very easily, and he couldn't. I wonder, makes me think about what might have been going on in his head at this moment and all the pressures that he was under, and that ultimately, he couldn't quite get over at that moment.
Now, in the short period of time since WeWork's implosions, there have been stories told many times in books, podcasts, there are movies in productions. How did you push yourself to tell something different about this story, and why should people watch it?
I think number one, you've probably heard the basic outlines of the story, but you don't know the people until you see them. And I think as we see in so many areas of life, when you can see videotape of people and you can really learn more about them and understand them better as characters, you understand much more about what they did and why they did it. So there's a profundity to that. I also think that I tried to focus on, rather than just making a simple morality tale about Adam's hubris and therefore he's bad and the venture capital markets that pushed him to take so many risks and go so big so fast are bad. I tried to look at the story from the perspective of the different people who worked there and really understand the human side of it and understand the basic questions that WeWork was asking and answering about how we live and work together, and kind of take from that, hopefully, some lessons about how we can rebuild and rethink capitalism as we emerge from this terrible pandemic and really are rethinking so many things. So to me, the story is it's something of a journey through the era that just ended. It's something of a fable of this time that's in the past, even though it was just a year or two ago. It seems like the distant past, and I hope we can take some lessons from that and have some fun remembering what about it was good and what about it was maybe off the rails.
And even though Adam didn't participate in the film, have you heard anything from his team? Any reaction? Any context?
I heard anecdotally that he hadn't watched it but was going to, but I haven't heard any sort of clear sense from him. I haven't gotten a formal reaction from him in terms of whether he liked the film.
Right. Any thoughts on the outlook for the WeWork of today? I mean, it's still a $9 billion company. It's not nothing, but it is certainly a shadow of what it once was.
I would imagine that a company like WeWork or other co-working companies would be pretty well positioned to come out of this period of the COVID and the pandemic and do well, because as I'm sure you report often, and as we read in the news, a lot of large companies, and they were turning their business towards enterprise companies, are deciding that they want to have less space and more flexible arrangements, and they're shedding these big leases, and something like WeWork probably offers a lot of solutions for them. I know that they're going public through a SPAC. I'm certainly not an expert on SPACs, but that's an interesting way to come to market. And I know that they've pared back some of the elements of the company that perhaps were problematic when they tried to go public a year ago. So my hunch is they'll probably do well, but I'd leave that, Emily, to you and your colleagues in the financial press to pick apart a little more.